Now, after 19 days of often gut-wrenching testimony, the prosecution rested their case this morning in the murder trial of Casey Anthony. Now, after jurors were excused, the defense team quickly began to argue for an acquittal. NBC's Lilia Luciano joins me live from outside the courthouse in Orlando. Lilia, you've been following us. What happened?
Well, today the defense, Richard, presented this motion for acquittal. They said that the prosecution did not have enough evidence to prove where, when, or how Kaylee died. They said that there was not enough evidence to prove for premeditation, and that their theory that Kaylee had drowned in a pool accidentally was not excluded either by the evidence. Now, Judge Perry disagreed. He denied this motion. He quoted the duct tape. He mentioned the chloroform. He talked about those internet searches, just making all of these items valid, and said and concluded that, yes, there is sufficient evidence for a jury to decide, and not him at this point. Now the case is rested until tomorrow when the defense begins presenting its case. And the big question out there is whether or not Casey will be put on the stand. Everybody's asking this question.
Lilia, also part of this was a discussion about a tattoo. Why was that brought up?
Well, yesterday we heard from a tattoo artist who said that he's known Casey for quite some time, for 7 years already. Other than the fact that he tattooed Bella Vita, which means life is beautiful, or the beautiful life, on her back while Kaylee was missing. It's also significant what she told him. She had made an appointment on July 15th, the day that Kaylee was reported missing, that she wanted to go into his parlor on the 19th, and he said that she said that she would bring Kaylee with her. So that could actually work towards the defense's case that Casey was living on this surreal life and that she was not thinking straight, telling this artist that she was going to bring Kaylee in.
All right, Lilia Luciano there in Orlando, thank you. Let's bring in Susan Filan, who is an MSNBC senior legal analyst and former prosecutor. Susan, good day to you, and thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
What did you think of how the prosecution did now that they're arrested?
They did the best they could with what they had. They didn't make any mistakes. They proceeded methodically. I think they did very, very well. Of course, there's a giant hole in their case. That's not their fault. But given what they have, they made the absolute most of it. I think they did well.
They did well. Okay, so then that brings us to the defense's strategy. If you're representing Casey, what would be your first move here?
I would say I made a big mistake in opening statement. I promised something I can't deliver. No.
That'd be a lot to do.
Right. I would attack the forensics. I would go with a war of the experts, because the forensics is really the crux of the case. And so I would try to refute and rebut every bit of evidence that the state put forward in the forensics of the case. I would do the hair, the chloroform, the smell of death, the larva, all the hard science. And I would pierce doubt through that part of the case. Then I would say, you know what, she may be a liar, she may be a bad mother, you may hate her, but that's not proof of murder. The proof of murder part of this case is in the forensics.
Well, then how do you deal with the earlier claim, if you're the defense here, that the father molested Casey? How are you going to work that into what the question that Lilia brought up to us, which is, will Casey take the stand to try to deal with that?
Oops. No, I mean, I think what they can do is they can try to skirt around that, because even if Casey was molested as a child, it doesn't mean that she didn't murder Kaylee. So I just never really got that. I think that's to be saved for the mitigation phase. If this goes to the penalty phase, if she's convicted and she goes to a death penalty jury, you want to say, look, she may have done this heinous thing, but here's why, and then get some sympathy for her on one of the grounds of mitigation. But really, I got to tell you, I don't like their strategy for Casey's defense at all.
We'll see what they do going forward. Now, the chief medical examiner saying that the death was due to homicide. What can the defense do going forward to try to deal with that?
So you don't really know it's homicide. You don't have a cause of death. If you don't have a cause of death, you're not sure it's homicide. It's your theory, it's your hypothesis, it's your belief, but you don't have actual proof of it. And it could have been an accident. But the problem is, with all this other circumstantial evidence that the jury's already heard, it's hard to give Casey essentially the bonus, the benefit of, if she did dispose of Kaylee and let her decompose so badly, that's why you can't find a cause of death. In other words, are you going to reward her for dumping her like garbage in a plastic bag?
Right. Susan Filan, thank you very much for that.